TaxAct's filing software and live tax experts can help small businesses easily knock out their taxes. Actually, our experts can help you find deductions and credits for any sized business. Itty-bitty businesses, medium-sized, really big, mid-sized, small businesses, companies with 0 employees, and mom-and-pop conglomerates. Yep, our tax experts can help all of them. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Are you looking to be more involved in the Dog Pound community? If so, please visit patreon.com/dogwithabone. For just $1 a month, you can help support Dog with a Bone's mission. Please visit our page to learn about the multiple tiers that will give you access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, documents, photos, videos, and live monthly events with me. I thank you for your continued support and consideration. Warning, this episode contains adult content and listener discretion is advised. All views and opinions expressed by Dog with a Bone guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the host or the contributors. Everyone, and welcome back to Dog with a Bone. If you have not already, please join our Dog with a Bone discussion Facebook page where you can meet other listeners and discuss the episodes as we move through the season. There will be a ton to talk about. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to Dog with a Bone on Spotify or wherever you listen so you get notified when episodes are released. Hey everyone, and welcome to the second bonus episode. Why am I doing another bonus episode? Well, that's because I was able to talk to Teresa and Cindy after the last episode was released. But also, Donald finally got to read the letter that Chelsea dropped off at the Jeffersonville Fire Department. It becomes very clear why Vernon never wanted Donald to read that letter. What was in the letter that was so important? Let me break it down real quick. In the letter, Chelsea says that Mackenzie told her it was both her and her sister who were supposed to be killed in that fire. This is huge because we know that Jennifer, her half-sister, was there that night. However, Jennifer called her dad, Teddy, and asked him to come get her. We also know that Marianne wanted the two boys to come spend the night as well, which is very unusual for Marianne to ask for the kids to come spend the night because, again, they weren't even home. They were out at the bar, and there was no special occasion for Marianne to want the boys to come over. If we really sit back and think about it, there could have been 4 kids who died in that home that night. Chelsea then goes on to say that Mackenzie told her that the stairs were going to catch on fire and that she would be trapped in her own bedroom. Based on the forensics and what we know of the fire, this is exactly what happened. The accelerant was poured up and down those stairs, and they were the first to go. We also know that Mackenzie's windows were nailed shut, so she had no way of getting out. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the timeline. Chelsea says Mackenzie told her about this dream the day before the fire. So did Mackenzie tell Chelsea about this on Wednesday or Tuesday? I believe Mackenzie overheard this plan of a fire on Tuesday night, and then Wednesday, she starts asking questions because her behavior changes. We heard all of the different ways that Mackenzie's behavior was different on Wednesday. Now let's pivot for a second and talk about the second letter. That's the certified letter from Cindy Wilson. Cindy had an interaction with Marianne at the VFW, which raised some concerns for her. Cindy tells me Mike Wilson, who unfortunately is now deceased, had told her about a conversation that Marianne had with Teresa. We talked about this in the previous episode, where Marianne supposedly confessed to Teresa that she killed Mackenzie.
She did not confess nothing to me. Me and Mary were not friends.
You were never at a party with Mary after the fire?
No.
So that never happened? Mary never told you drunk that she killed Mackenzie?
No.
Okay.
Hell no. Don't you think I would have turned that in?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? I mean...
Yeah. Definitely, if I'd had any information now, I'd have been questioned by Detective Brown 3 different times because of Cynthia's letter.
Teresa told me that Marianne was hired to work at the VFW when they attended the wake for Mackenzie, and it was her boss, Vincent, that offered her the job.
So she came to work. She messed up my schedule. Did I like her taking and working there? No, I did not, because then she messed up my work schedule. They had to make space for her to come in. So, yeah, I wasn't happy about that.
How long did she work at the VFW then with you?
Oh, maybe a couple months, maybe. Because I know she worked for a couple days, and then she went to Myrtle Beach.
Yes.
For Bike Week, because that's all she could talk about at the funeral home was going to Myrtle Beach for Bike Week.
She talked to you about that too?
Oh, she talked to everybody about that at the funeral home. That's all she wanted to talk about was Myrtle Beach. Your daughter's laying over there in a casket, dead, and you're talking about going to Myrtle Beach? Come on. If it was my child, I don't give a shit. I'd been up there in the fire myself getting her out.
What do you think about this whole thing? You know Marianne from just working and growing up in that area in Kenny and the Potters. Like, what's your take on all of this?
Well, I keep hearing about a brother named William. Yeah, everybody keeps saying that they think he's the one that did it. I mean, everybody I talked to that knew the family blames it on William. I don't even know who William is.
One concern I have with this statement is Teresa had told me earlier in our conversation that she knew all of Marianne's brothers and sisters. So how does she not know William? Teresa then tells me she actually saw Marianne and Kenny that night of the fire.
Yeah, I was coming out. Me and my daughter Tracy were coming out, and they were going in. So it was probably about 10:30 maybe. They were coming in, and I was going out.
What's interesting here is that this is the second witness who tells me that Marianne and Kenny were at the village pump that night. Teresa says that as she was leaving, they were coming in. And I want to point out that when I had asked Vernon about this, if Marianne and Kenny were at the bar, he said he never heard of that and didn't know anything about it, where I found now 2 witnesses who said, yes, they were there that night. Not that difficult. Donald mentioned something about seeing a fire. Your dad might have saw some sparks or something like that, a little fire.
Yeah, because my dad lived right down the street from him, and the dog was going crazy. His dog was going crazy, and she woke him up. So he went to let her outside. He thought maybe she had to go to the bathroom. He said there was a bunch of commotion behind his house. There was a bunch of people back there, and he heard them all out back there yelling and screaming and stuff. But he took the dog out on the front porch, and he said that's when he seen the fire. And he thought maybe they was burning trash, because he said he just woke up. He thought they were burning trash down there, and he said he went back, took the dog back in the house, and she's barking again. And he said he went back out, and he realized that it wasn't a trash fire, it was a house fire, so he called 911. But he said Mary was walking up the street.
Mary was walking up at the street when when the fire was going already?
Yeah, when the fire was going on, she was walking up the street. Can't talk to him now because he just died a month ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you happen to recall, what time he let the dog out?
No, because after Jerry called me.
Jerry is Kenny Mossberger's sister.
I called him.
Yeah.
And I said, Dad, do you know what's going on down the street? And he said, hell yeah, there's a fire down there. I called the fire department. And he said, that girl's mother.
Okay.
And we're talking about Mary, Mackenzie's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Walking up and down the street. She was on the phone. He said he thought she was on the phone.
We know that Marianne did not use this phone to call Donald, nor did she use this phone to call 911. So who is it that Marianne is talking to on this cell phone before the fire department even arrived? But he wouldn't have like a time frame of when that was.
No, because he talked to Detective Brown too.
He did.
Yeah, because he wanted somebody to do something about it, especially when he found out that old girl was in there.
So hopefully all of that is in Detective Brown's files. Did you often see Marianne and Kenny at the Village Pump?
No. Mainly when she started working there, they would hang out the BFW in Campbell.
Teresa then goes and tells me more about Marianne working at the VFW and how Marianne was playing tickets and how she was using inside information from working at the VFW to, quote, win money. I say steal money.
They would play all kinds of tickets. And since she worked there, she could get into the computer and see which batch of tickets was going to sell out. And he had winners in there. They did that, and I put a stop to that because I figured out what they were doing. I went to my boss and told him, you need to change that because they can get in there and find out. That's how they're winning all this money on these tickets, because they know what's in them. Tickets.
Wow.
He was checking it out. So she didn't like me too much after that.
Did she also steal money from the VFW?
That I don't know.
Marianne has been arrested and charged for stealing from the VFW in large sums of money.
I can tell you, she did steal from customers. I know. Sold her a bike, and she made up this form and had it notarized, saying that she would pay her payments every week for her to come into B, and she would give her money for the bike every week.
Okay.
And then she turned around and sold the bike because she had the title to it, because gave her the title thinking she was going to pay her, and then
she never did.
She put the B, no. And then another guy sold Kenny a truck, and he did the same thing to him.
I want to learn more about Mike because he was Teresa's boss and the manager of the VFW. I asked Teresa if Mike was ever involved in drugs.
I know he had a lot of medications from the VA. What they were, I have no clue.
But illegal drugs?
No, not illegal drugs. He would never do that.
He wasn't a drug dealer?
No. Not to my knowledge, I'll put it that way. I mean, he didn't sell drugs at the VFW or nothing.
Well, I'm glad I finally got to talk to you. I wish I could have talked to you before this. That's why I was trying to reach you so bad, because I knew that this was out there and I had to explore it and I had to follow up on it and I had to sort out what is what to ultimately get Mackenzie justice. Teresa and I ended our call, and again, I appreciate her reaching out and finally having a conversation with me. Afterwards, I gave Donald the call to give him an update and clarify again what he says Teresa told him about that conversation with Marianne at that party.
And she said that Marianne told her in a bedroom, away from everybody, that I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm the one, I killed my daughter. She says that Marianne was going to burn her house down. She admits that. She described it as a party at her house, and Marianne and Kenny were there. And she didn't like Kenny. She didn't like Kenny at all anyways.
Well,
or it might have been the other way. She didn't like Marianne. Because, see, Kenny's sister was best friends with her. That's the Jerry. That's the one
right.
I told you. She always said Marianne did this. They were at the TFC as Kenny was purchasing the gasoline cans.
Unfortunately, during the production of this episode, we found out that Jerry had passed away. But I do want to point out that we now have 2 witnesses who saw Kenny filling gas cans that day of the fire. There are always 2 sides to every story. So it's now time that we hear from the woman who wrote the certified letter to Vernon, telling him what she knew about Mackenzie's case and conversations that were had. This woman, her name is Cindy. Cindy starts off our conversation telling me about an interaction that she had with Marianne herself after the murder.
I go into the VFW where my late former husband was commander to have a cup of coffee. I normally get in around 10 a.m. No one was in there except him and the bartender, Mary. She went into staring out into space when I asked her how she was doing. She said she had stood there looking down at Mackenzie. She looked like she was sleeping. I'm reading this from the one binder. She looked so peaceful, she didn't suffer. So when I approached Vernon at Walmart, I said, if she looked like she was sleeping, Vernon, she looked peaceful, she didn't suffer, which photograph is in her mind? It's not at the corner. Some people that commit these horrific crimes take a photograph in their mind of a peaceful individual, usually a family member, that they've murdered.
This is very common for those who commit a crime to not want to see what they did. So they will cover up the victim with a blanket or not want to be the first one to find them. We know that Marianne did not want to see Mackenzie when she was brought out of that house into the ambulance. She didn't even want to hold her baby, as she said in the article. She had every opportunity to hold Mackenzie, but she chose not to.
According to Mary Ann, for months, I would go in and she drove me crazy. That is not an understatement. There were times I thought, I don't even want to go in and have coffee. I hope some of her biker buddies are there. They'd show up and they got rowdy. Because all she talked about was she had 2 children, 2 little boys, and she lost custody of them, and she's fighting to get custody back. And this whole entire time that went on for months, she only had 2 kids, the 2 boys, Mackenzie's 2 little brothers. After Mackenzie was murdered, Mary Ann never, ever mentioned her 2 little boys ever again to me. And she never mentioned the little boys' names. When Mackenzie was murdered, all she talked about, Mackenzie.
Well, we all know this is probably because she is wanting to get as much money as possible.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy, champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
I knew something was very wrong. But when she went into that daze that day, and she snapped out of it, and she looked up at me, her eyebrows about touched the center of her head, she realized what she said. Mm-hmm. She never spoke to me again. When I went in to get coffee, she did not get me coffee, and someone else had to get me coffee. She kept her distance from me.
I asked Cindy, when did Mike actually tell her about this conversation between Teresa and Mike?
Soon.
Do you recall how that conversation happened?
I can see it happening. This is the only time in our entire marriage I ever saw him spaz this bad. And I go, what has happened? I just, and he was stumbling all over himself because I was initially pretty furious. He'd been gone for hours again. I am really, really getting tired. I'm almost at the point, Mikey. I've been with Teresa. And I thought, Teresa, your favorite bartender that you've been out to the casino with, spent the weekends with. That's not what I'm talking about. I go, okay, tell me what you're talking about. I couldn't leave her today. I couldn't leave her. She's just crying and couldn't talk, couldn't breathe. And she told me what happened the night before. It was the night before, by the way. I said, okay, what? Well, her and Mary Ann was drinking, and Mary Ann had a meltdown and told Teresa how she killed Mackenzie. And then she snapped out of it. Sound familiar? She snapped out of it and said, if you tell anybody, I'll be back and I will burn down the house with your grandchildren in it.
And this happened at Teresa's house?
Wherever Mary Ann and Teresa were there that night, I don't know. I did not ask while he was spazzing, but I would assume that he was at Teresa's home for the huge duration. All these years, I have protected Teresa. Her name is not anywhere in these binders. I made the huge mistake, at the time I didn't know it, of putting her name in a correspondence.
Why were you protecting Teresa?
Mary Ann and Kenny, would they burn down the house with her grandbabies in there? Absolutely. It doesn't matter. Whatever happened between Teresa and my husband, that pales in my mind. After Teresa's daughter went to prison, I come into the VFW to get my morning coffee. Teresa's running the canteen by herself. There's no one around. I sat down and I said, coffee, please. She walked over and I said, Teresa. She goes, yeah. I'm sorry about your daughter. How are you doing? And from that point on, her and I started talking. Because in her face, I saw a woman with an absolute broken heart. She's got a daughter in prison over all the drugs those three had in the house, plus her baby, her grandbabies.
Was Teresa involved in those drugs as well?
As far as I know, the source, if you will, of the drugs was my husband. I found when we were separated and I went over to the apartment during Christmas to see my husband, he had bags of drugs sitting on the kitchen counter like you would have bananas and a bag of chips.
And when you're saying drugs, you're talking pills or marijuana or what?
Both. The best way I can say to you is I gave Teresa a free pass of what happened between her and my husband when I saw her brokenness.
If you are like me, you are wondering the same thing. Why did Cindy put Teresa's name in the letter if she was trying to protect her? I have to say it was not until after the letter did Cindy realize her mistake in doing this. Listen, it makes sense to me if I was Teresa and this conversation with Mary Ann did happen. I would be very afraid to talk too. I would be afraid that Mary Ann and Kenny would come back and burn down my house with kids in it. Heck, it wouldn't be their first rodeo. But also, add on the layer of corruption and cover-up of Fayette County. Heck yes, I would be afraid to tell anyone my truth. But now is the time, if there was ever a right time to do so. Throughout this season, I have questioned over and over again if this was really a situation of I have something on you, you have something on me, and that is why Mackenzie's case has been covered up for 20 years.
Mike came in. I could tell by the slam of the door that something bad had happened again. And he comes in and he goes, you ain't going to believe what that fucking, and he called her a fucking crazy bitch because he said she's a fucking crazy bitch. Mary Ann. She announced, screaming in the VFW, if I go to prison for this, meaning Mackenzie, that's how, what else is she talking about? all you fuckers are going to prison too. In other words, Mike explained to me she would blow the whistle on the embezzling and the drug trafficking if she goes to prison over Mackenzie's murder. I come in one day, people are enraged. I'm very discreet, and a couple of the auxiliary ladies came over, and I said, what's going on? Like, what's going on? They said that Stanford let Marianne and Kenny leave during the night and relocate to Dayton. I was the volunteer auditor of the VFW for gaming. 10 bins, couple $3 million a year. I took a course up at the Ohio Attorney General's office and got a certificate. During the course, I realized my husband and his 5 partners were running an illegal gaming operation. Wow. I was with him when he bought large bags off of pallets that were not registered. So they were running, instead of 1 game per bin, they were running 2 and 3 of registered, unregistered, and then splitting the other 1 to 2 million between themselves. And this went on for almost, I think, 8 years. My husband kept a ledger. He announced one day in the VFW, if I go to prison, all those motherfuckers are going to prison. But he said the smartest motherfucker of them all is that fucker Stanford. Because Stanford uses a deputy to get his kickback. So I immediately walked into the office. I don't know what happened in the office on the phone, but he came out and I said, do you have a death wish? And he goes, what the fuck are you talking? And I said, you have no idea who's sitting in that canteen, and you just threatened Vern. Of all people, I rode shotgun with Vernon when I was a reporter out on drug busts. And I said, you just threatened them. And Hottinger, he was the chief at the time, at Courthouse Police Department, and his boys. I said, have you lost your mind? Down the road, my husband told me, he said, you know what's going to happen to me, don't you? He said, I'm going to catch a bullet in the back of my head. He said, this is my life insurance policy. And he patted the ledger in his back pocket. And I looked at him, he said, I have got recordings of everyone that's been taking kickbacks. Of the interstate drug trafficking and the gaming, embezzling. The other thing I discovered was the interstate drug trafficking.
Cindy is able to provide more insight into what was going on at the VFW and Washington Courthouse at the time.
Vernon, one of his 2 right-hand deputies, Doug. My husband is sitting out there smoking doobies with his nephew by marriage, who's the chief mechanic with a criminal history that works for Doug. He's chief mechanic. And how they're doing the interstate drug trafficking is they put it in the panels of the vehicles that are on the tractor trailers. That's how they get it all the way up to Fayette County. Vernon is on the BCI Drug Task Force for Ohio.
Cindy's interview with me was very eye-opening, and a lot of the pieces started coming together on why we still are here 20 years later. I'm now going to share the recording of Donald and Leonard Stein, who was an officer at Fayette County Sheriff's Office. Siegel had been his sergeant, so he has inside information about Mackenzie's homicide. Stein was also the one who warned Donald about the hit that was put on his head. Unfortunately, again, we have another individual who has passed away. But in this conversation, Stein shares what he believes is the motive behind why Marianne and Kenny set that fire and killed Mackenzie.
I remember when me and you had that meeting a couple of years ago, and you were telling me about the good old boys, and then that there was a hit on me. Well, I don't understand why they would cover up. I don't understand why they could cover up.
Anything they can. Well, let me tell you what Steve told me. See, he was my sergeant when I worked at the church department. Steve came to me one night, and we worked midnight duty all the time.
Right.
He said, Leonard, let me tell you something. He said, that boy is going to break down, and he's going to pay for what he did. And you knew who he meant, don't you?
No.
Kenny.
Oh, Mossberg.
Yes. He also knew that there's witnesses telling him to go down to the filling station, got a gallon of gasoline just before that fire, didn't he?
No.
Off the man who owns the filling station. He told another guy that same thing. The lady lives across the street in the light greenish blue house. They went across the street and sat on her porch while the fire was going on. And that old lady said they had no emotions whatsoever.
Right.
And she asked them where the kids were, and they said, oh, they're upstairs. And the fire department didn't know anybody was upstairs for 20 minutes. And then Spiegel's girl, Kenny Mossberger, came up to me, was crying, and laid his head on my shoulders crying. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. That boy wanted to tell me right there what he did. And I think right in my heart, he is the one that did that. I think I'd be willing to bet that he's the one that set that fire for your ex-wife. She wanted it done. She worked with VFW.
Right.
There's two other ladies that worked with her. She told both of them ladies that she's getting hard paying child support.
Well, yeah, she was paying child support.
So I have the suspicion that your wife got Kenny to set that fire.
So Steven talked to you after this crime?
After. About a month. Yes. We went out one night, matter of fact, we were Miami Chase High School, sitting in the parking lot there talking about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he came up to me and he told me that. He said, that boy's got something to say and he's going to say it. He's going to pay for what he did. I'll tell you right now, they said he was investigated. They didn't do nothing on that investigation. Not a thing. I worked there, I know.
On what? On what investigation?
When Vern said he was investigating, did he investigate?
Yeah.
He didn't do nothing. Not a thing. Not a thing.
Just going back to Cindy's interview real quick, she does mention about the drugs being trafficked and Vernon's role in covering this up. Well, Stein also mentions this to Donald.
Did you also know that Butch runs drugs for Doug? You know Doug?
I know Doug, so, yeah.
He's the biggest drug dealer in Fayette County. Well, goes down to Sarasota, Florida, picks up drugs. He goes to Fruitdale, Florida, picks up dirty money, brings it up here to Doug. And Doug distributes the money with Doug's cousin. Well, they're not charged because they're relatives. Because them Stanford's covered them up. Mike Stiegel and Vern Stanford was on the police department for how many years together.
Right.
And then he took him over there with him.
Right.
Because they've been buddies all them years.
Right.
So they're protecting each other. That's all it was.
But why does Stiegel think Kenny will break?
Because I don't think he liked Kenny very well. Kenny was always a mouthy little punk, like
he is still today.
Yeah. And I've known him since he's been born. I think it's a big cover-up. I think everybody's trying to cover everybody up. And I think it's going to come out. I really do. And I still think Kenny's wanting to come tell me what happened.
So many people have continued to ask the same questions. How is it that Vernon remains the sheriff of Fayette County and has never had another person run against him? Well, one person did, and that's Stein. Here's what he had to say about it.
He's been trying to get me fired. You knew that, didn't you? Oh, he went down to Greenville. I'm a reserve officer down there. It was about a month ago. He said he doesn't go himself. He sends his little buddies down there. He's trying to get me fired down there and said that they need better cooperation. Said, get rid of signs, we'll have better cooperation. Well, he went out and chopped the door. He went out there and tried to get them to fire me. Said that I was a troublemaker. He sent Larry Bongold over to Mill Holland 2 weeks ago, told that mayor-in-chief that they need to get rid of me. So then he asked for all my qualifications. He asked how much I was making, if I was full-time, and everything. So they're trying to get rid of me. That's what they're trying to do too. So I watch myself too.
The question really is, how many others have thought of throwing their name into the ring for sheriff and were pushed out? This episode again shows the level of cover-up and corruption in regards to Mackenzie's case. We have first-hand accounts of conversations that happened between Siegel and Stein. We have Cindy sharing the reasons behind why nothing has happened to Marianne and Kenny. The factors that enable some people to get away with murder are connections, drugs, money, and corruption. And we have all of these factors in Mackenzie's case. The way that this specific murder took place and the people that it has affected goes beyond the scope of Mackenzie herself. While the death is very tragic, it also gives us insight and shines a light into the deep-seated evil and corruption that plagues Fayette County. We need to stand up and be Mackenzie's voice. We need to turn her story from one of tragedy to triumph. Dog with a Bone is hosted by Melissa Sandberg, investigated, produced, and written by Melissa Sandberg. Additional writing by Caitlin Sandberg. Edited by Jason Sandberg. Mixed and mastered by Morrow Mixing and Mastering. Theme music by Alex Yukich. Dog with a Bone is a Sat Squatch production.